Take 3. Thank you for watching another episode of Well Let's Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hilton. And my guest today, George Jarrett. And I'm thrown off here, but that's okay. Thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely.
Thank you for dealing with my idiocracy right now.
Hey,
and
it's fine.
Trying to get everything set up. Everything was set up perfectly. So let's just skip all that. You used to work for the Jonesboro Sun.
I did.
Okay, so this is the guy that Andrew Brown knows, that he was on here a couple weeks ago, and they do a crime podcast. And what's that called?
It's called Diamond State Murder Board.
Yeah, okay.
And we kind of profile cases, like about half the cases we profile are in the state of Arkansas, and then about half of them are out of the state.
Yeah.
A lot of cases we profile are cases that I've written about.
Yeah.
I'm a journalist. I'm a true crime author, and so I've written 3 true crime books. And so several months ago, Andrew approached me. He had listened to me on a podcast. We were friends at the gym, you know. And I do a lot of podcast interviews. You know, they'll call and say, "Hey, can we talk about a case or whatever?" And I said, "Sure." And I write a lot about politics and business, so I have a lot of different other...
That's for a magazine you do, right? You're working now for?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I work for a company called Talk Business and Politics.
Okay.
And so kind of like my day-to-day job is I write business and politics stories for them. But then kind of overall, I still have the true crime books that I've written in the past. And then obviously, you know, we decide, like going back to Andrew, so he was upstairs mopping at the gym one day. And he's like pointing at his earphone saying, "Man, you're on this podcast. I'm listening to you." And I said, "Okay." Well, he asked me, he said, "Have you ever thought about doing a podcast yourself?" And I said, "No." I said, "Not really."
Yeah.
I said, you know. And so then...
Were you being interviewed on this podcast?
Yes.
Okay.
I did... the first podcast I did was a podcast called Hell and Gone.
Oh, I've heard of it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, Andrew was talking about that. Cool.
It was about the Rebecca Gould murder case. It's been in the news a lot lately because they just arrested a guy after 17 years. I was there the day her mother actually handed me her missing poster before they even found the girl's body.
Wow.
And I've still got the missing poster to this day. And so Catherine Townsend, she used to write for, I think she still may write for Discovery Channel, but she had an idea for a podcast back in 2018. She had read some of the stuff I'd written about the case.
Yeah.
And she had read my second book called The Creekside Bones. And there was a chapter dedicated to Rebecca's case in there. She was a 22-year-old college student who disappeared in Melbourne, Arkansas back in 2004. And they found her body a week later, partially clad. She was wearing a t-shirt and panties. Her body was obviously very decomposed.
Yeah.
I was out there.
How long was she out? Like
a week.
A week, okay.
What had happened was she had been hit in the head, or something had happened to her head. We're not sure yet. There's a lot of speculation about that. And so... but it had been very warm, and so her body had been badly decomposed.
Wow.
And so I was on this Hell and Gone podcast. I was in about 6 or 7 episodes. It became one of the most popular true crime podcasts of the year. And so after that, I was just getting call after call after call for podcast after podcast.
Yeah.
So Andrew's like, "You want to do your own sometime?" And I'm like, "Not really. I mean, I got plenty of projects going on. I've got 2 different books I'm writing right now.
Right.
I've got the 3 I've already written. I have a regular job." So, but then one day I was in a really bad mood. I was out walking my dogs, and I don't know why. When I was in a bad mood, I just thought of Andrew Brown, and so I texted him.
That's
I said,
funny that you put that in correlation with bad food.
Right.
You hear that, Andrew?
Yeah, nicest guy in the world.
I know.
Right? Heart of gold, that guy.
Yeah.
So I texted him and I said, "Hey man, let's do a podcast." And he's like, "Are you serious?" Because he wanted to produce one. Now, what's funny about Andrew in that is he knows nothing about true crime at all.
Okay.
He's not interested in it. He loves movies. He's into other things. Sometimes he's doing this Pokemon thing that he's been doing all this
Pokemon
time.
Go, yeah.
And he doesn't ever like to tell me that he's doing it because I'm like the other day he was wandering around my house looking for Pokemon. I was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm looking for Pokemons." And so Andrew and I got...
You know, they have to say something about that, just to cut you off there for a second. That Pokemon Go, you got to be careful of that stuff. I don't know if I told you this, but when that first came out, it was my second deployment. I think it came out in 2016, that app or whatever.
Yeah.
But guys were doing this over the fob.
Yeah.
Like over a base.
Yeah.
So I'm like, dude, you got to be careful. Especially when you walk through a freaking parking lot.
Yeah, no kidding.
Go, pow!
No kidding.
I was looking for Squid or whatever his name was, but anyways, yeah, keep going.
So we started the podcast in December, and we do like 1 episode a week. Our latest episode is about the West Memphis 3.
Okay.
That's a case that I covered. I interviewed Damien Eccles when he was on death row.
Wow.
He wrote me a letter, so I went down there in 2010. I interviewed him. I did a 4-part series on his case.
Yeah.
And then my first book, which is in West Memphis, is about the West Memphis 3 case.
Yeah.
I had written more stories about it than any journalist in the world.
Really?
And I didn't know that. Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky, the directors of the Paradise Lost franchise, the 3 big-time documentaries that were made out, 2 of them were nominated for Academy Awards.
Were these actual film like documentaries?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, they're big time. They're produced, or they're shown on HBO.
Mm-hmm.
There's also another documentary called West of Memphis by Amy Berg.
Okay.
Amy had.
Where can you find these, by the way?
It's HBO, Showtime.
Okay.
Here, the funny thing is, like, the directors gave me copies of the documentaries.
Yeah.
So I just have them at home, so
Okay.
I don't have to look them up. So
Yeah.
I'm sure if you got, I know
Google
there's some HBO service you can probably find them. They're hugely popular. I mean, I would go on a limb and say that the Paradise Lost franchise is probably the most popular true crime documentaries probably ever made. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. Okay.
And then West of Memphis, Amy Berg she's the director who she directed a documentary about Benazir Bhutto, the Pakistani prime minister who got assassinated in 2005. Wow. It was a very famous documentary.
Yeah.
And she actually came to Jonesboro and did a documentary about this case after that project. And I met with her. I consulted with her many times. Very nice lady. And the documentary is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's kind of those are a couple of the cases I've covered through the years. I have it's funny, you're talking about your experiences being in Iraq.
Yeah. Afghanistan.
Or Afghanistan,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Actually, that works too, because a girl that I do a lot of, we do a lot of research and we do a lot of posting and writing and podcasting about the Rebecca Gould murder case, the first one I mentioned. My friend Jennifer Buchholz, she was in the military for a long time, and kind of what her job was in the military was she would vet people who would come to work on bases.
Okay.
If you're a local and you want to work on a base.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Yep. She was the hiring process and screening process for all the locals.
Yes.
That is cool. That's really cool.
She even wrote a book about...
that's super smart. If that's a really good idea to write a book on that, because that process is very extensive.
Yes.
Even when we allow people to come on the fob, we have to go through an extensive process to even get them in.
Right.
Like if you suck poop out of our thing, we have to fingerprint you, and go through this long process of trying to even get on. I don't know exactly what the process is hiring wise. I have no clue, but I'm sure that's a genius idea to write a book about that.
Yeah.
And her experiences.
Yeah, and she is very good at what she does. Like, she was basically vetting them to see if they were terrorists.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah, it's like asking questions and stuff like that and see what their responses are.
She wrote a book, I think it's called Where's My Goat?
Because,
I mean, the book is great.
Yeah,
it's about Afghani culture, and she talks about how they would come in and they would there's one story, and if she watches this and I butcher this, I want you to forgive me. But her and I are actually presenting at CrimeCon together in
I think you told me about that
in
June. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I butcher
jealous.
this, you can. Actually, you and your husband will be at my house in a week, so you can stay for a few days. They're coming in for Andrew's wedding.
Oh, okay.
But there's a story she told where these 2 brothers came in to apply for jobs.
The Afghan brothers.
Okay,
brothers. Yeah.
And one brother was like, "Oh, I don't have a brother." And then the next brother would come in and say his brother was dead, and they came in the same car. And so lying over there was it was a way of life.
Yeah.
And so that was very enlightening to me. I've never obviously been to Afghanistan. I'm not a hero or, like you guys. You guys go over there and fight and protect our country. But so she got interested in that Rebecca Gould case. Yeah. And she actually contacted me after she heard Helen Gone.
Okay.
So her and I, she's a frequent guest on our Diamond State Murder Board podcast because she just offers brilliant analysis.
Yeah.
On other cases. She's... very well read. I mean, she doesn't like me to tell people that she worked at the Pentagon for a short time.
That's cool.
She goes overseas to train police forces. Sometimes I'll be talking to her. I'm like, "Where are you at?" And she goes, "I can't tell you."
Yeah, wow.
And I'm like, "Okay, well, let me get the map out. I'll figure it out eventually. Yeah. There's enough leakage when you're talking. I'll figure it out."
Right.
So anyway, that's kind of the project we're working on now. We're about to wrap our season in June. After CrimeCon, we're going to try to bring on maybe a special guest or 2 down there.
Cool.
A lot of, cool people.
And how many seasons have you guys done so far?
This is our first.
First season.
First season.
Okay. That's awesome. Excited. I was needing to mean to talk to Andrew about that too, getting my podcast on iTunes and Spotify, get on that level, because you guys have surpassed me in that. I'm just on YouTube.
He's the man on that.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Did this thing really die right now? Oh my god. This is the day that I came ultimately prepared. That's awesome. Take this off and I'll see if I can angle this in a way. I'll just cut all this out. God knows the last time it freaking went out. Let's see. I'm sorry about this, dude.
Hey, no problem. I've been here, man. Trust me. I was doing an interview one time, and it took them 2.5 hours to get the camera angle right.
Really?
Like, they were in my kitchen with these huge cameras, and it took 2 hours before they were happy. I was like, I just sat there waiting on them.
Yeah. It'll work just fine, actually. We'll work it, make it work. All right, what were we talking about? I'm sorry.
We were talking about my friend Jennifer, and then we kind of got into this is our first.
That's right.
First season of the podcast, and we're.
So I want to ask you too. Is like you basically cover everything that you've covered through Jonesboro, like the Jonesboro Sun, or have you done more?
No. I actually, I guess to go back, I went to college to be a lawyer.
Okay.
And that was kind of my thing I wanted to do. Well, my senior year of college, I met a lot. There's two types of lawyers I kept meeting repeatedly. Mm. Lawyers who were broke and lawyers who were miserable. Mm-hmm. And some who were broke and miserable. Yeah. And so I had a Supreme Court justice from a state. I was in like what they call moot court. Mm-hmm. And I was competing in a competition, a national competition, and I had a guy who sat on a Supreme Court in a state. Mm-hmm. And he told me he was a judge. They serve as judges. They bring in different types of people in the legal profession to judge these competitions. And I talked to him, and he told me if he could do his life over again, he never would have went into law. Really? And as soon as I heard that, I was like, okay. Yeah. Getting scary. So then I went on a trip to Europe for several weeks right after I graduated from college. And
what was this for?
Just through my college. Mm-hmm. If you had a certain GPA... And
you get to go and kind of experience.
They pay for your trip and
That's
everything.
Really cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was Lyon College in Batesville.
Okay.
And so I went. When I got back, I told my wife. I was married at the time. Still am married. Just as of this morning, we were still married.
I still kissed her, so I think that means we're still married.
So everybody asked me, "Are you still married?" I said, "As of this morning, yeah." But I told my wife. I said, "I think I'm going to take some time off." Mm-hmm. And so what I decided to do, I pulled out a newspaper, mm-hmm. and I just started going through the ads, looking for job ads, and a local newspaper needed a reporter. Yeah. So I went to the local newspaper, and I met with a guy named David Cox, mm-hmm. One of my all-time favorite bosses, mentors, just a fantastic human being, one of the best ever. And I did a writing test for him, mm-hmm. and I didn't take any journalism courses in college, not one. Nothing.
And you just had like a general background of writing, I guess?
Actually, I majored in history and I minored in political science.
And by the way, when we were talking and like through text, yes. I was like, he used to be journalism, so I'm like trying my best with like grammar.
Yeah, don't ever do that because I'm horrible at grammar.
Okay, good.
I mean, if I sit there for long enough, I can pretty much I can find all the mistakes if I do it, but I can guarantee you I never do that. Yeah. So, especially when my friends are texting me, so don't worry about it.
And I was like constantly putting LOL.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no kidding.
What was I thinking?
No, trust me, I'll show you some texts that my friends send me. Yeah, that's nothing.
But dude, that's so crazy. So you had no experience at all in journalism. They just hired you on. Man, that's awesome. It's just obviously a sign.
He told me what he would do.
Honestly, I think if you can talk your way into anything, I'm telling you right now. I can already tell you're a talker, and that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But I remember I started a job at the Hard Rock Hotel, right? Yeah. I used to work at the Hard Rock Hotel down in Orlando. And I was going in for an interview. I had no idea what I was going to... I had nothing prepared. That's how I do everything. Right. I like being asked spontaneously. That's how my brain works, and that's how... I like being put on the spot when it comes to questions, because it's just like almost kind of entertaining to me, So all of a sudden it clicked. Like they started asking me questions, and I started being funny. Yeah. I guess to them, not to me, but not intentionally. And then, it was just for a server job, like Star Service,
Yeah.
like where you had to go deliver food to different rooms and stuff in the hotel, which was awesome. You got to meet so many people. But we were just talking and talking, like there was no dead air. It was two people in there basically just interviewing me and talking. And I'm like, I'm not shutting up, but they love it.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things they look for, too, is... Well, I mean, there you go. I'm ranting again. But things they were looking for is somebody who can talk and who can carry on a conversation, be friendly, and to, essentially carry on a conversation and not be awkward. Right. And I was not being awkward at all, and I just felt comfortable. So, like I said, just probably exactly what happened, with your interview.
And the reason I chose history, when you're a lawyer, you do a lot of writing. Mm-hmm. And history, like if you look at lawyers, they're either philosophy majors, English majors, or history majors because they there's a lot of writing involved. So you have to write a lot. So I was used to writing.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you do get graded on writing
and
grammar and all that.
I was a pretty good writer.
Yeah.
So I started the job there. It was interesting. He said, I'll let you cover a lot of cops and courts. Yep. So you'd be in the courtroom, kind of get a feel for it. Because my plan was I was going to work for a year and then go back and go to law school. So
I'm going to cut you off. I really want to know, how was it like sitting in a courtroom? Like, what was your job in the courtroom to do?
Just to
listen, right? Jot things down.
Like to have a docket that comes out, and you'll have like different cases.
Yeah.
Like if I had like a big drug bust I was writing about, and those guys were going to be in court that day, then I would be waiting for them. Or a murder case, there's all sorts of hearings that go on before an actual murder trial.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know this, but like there'll be. The docket will have also there'll be a rape case. Next will be a major theft. Could be a bank robbery. Could be, and so you're just sitting in there waiting for those cases to come up. And sometimes like they'll add things to the add things that are not on the docket. So you kind of want to be in the courtroom,
right?
To I will say this. It would be exciting. Like if you haven't been in a courtroom very much for criminal cases, it would be exciting for you for like a first experience. Yeah. But after you've done it for a while, it gets really boring. I mean,
I'm sure
it gets to the point where like the suspects know who you are. They're like, man, George, don't put me in the newspaper. And I'm like, sorry, man, this one was just too bad. You gotta go.
Yeah.
See you next time, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
And literally, I will see you next time because you'll be back.
Yeah. So, do you bring a tape recorder with you to like listen to any key things that anything stands out?
No, I haven't in years. Okay. I used to record some, and if I feel like I need to...
A tape recorder? Who has a tape recorder now? It's 2021. Who's got this iPhone that has a tape recorder on it? What am I thinking?
Well, when I started, though, that's what we used.
Okay, yeah.
So that's very...
I'm sure.
It's apropos.
Yeah.
My first editor told me something, that if you are recording someone, you're not really listening to them. Mm-hmm. And it's bad writing.
I've heard that.
Like literally, and I get a comment every place. I've worked for multiple newspapers. I've worked for a lot of media companies. Mm-hmm. One consistent comment I always got is that I am what they call a quick turn, meaning I can cover something like a city council meeting or like a legislative session, and I can turn that story where it's up on our website or in the newspaper immediately. And it's because I don't record, because I'm actively taking notes. Okay. And it's flowing. And as soon as I hear like the lead of the story, like the thing that's going to draw the most people in, as soon as I have it, then I just start writing it. Like even as they're talking, I'm writing. Yeah. And so, but anyway, being a journalist is very interesting.
Do you have a really good memory?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So that helps.
Yeah. I can, like a lot of times, I don't even have to write down what somebody's saying to me. If I was quoting you for a story, as soon as you give me that quote, sometimes I'll be driving down the road just listening to something. I'll be like, oh, that's the quote. And I'll literally just like chicken scratch it onto like a piece of paper in my passenger seat and I've got it.
Nice. So it's like a file bin back here that comes up when you need it. That's genius. See, I'm long-term memory. So whatever happened a while ago, it will come up in my Facebook newsfeed back here. And I remember things that happened or things that I've done. My friend has been like, how did you remember that? Because like this one story I was telling him, I was like, yeah, remember that one time we bought a 12-pack of Corona and we were walking to your dad's condo and we were ready to drink and we're carrying it and it's one of those 12-packs. So it's a sturdy case of Corona beer, right? Yeah. I'm carrying it and it breaks. Like the handle of it, the top of the handle, the lip went like this, flipped up and broke and cracked like 8 beers. So it leaves us
Coronas, that's expensive,
It's
man.
expensive, yes. And we're 21, 22 years old. We're broke as hell. So
So did you get down on the ground and start drinking out of the box? I mean, what did you do?
we didn't, but it was a thought. We were thinking about getting a straw and just sucking up ants with it. Rocks, it didn't matter. But we were so depressed. But my buddy, going with that, my buddy was like, how did you remember that? He's like, I don't remember that. It's like, I think I remember that because it was funny. And it was really... what's the word? It was funny, but also at the time we were like ready to drink. We were ready to just, like it was, and then
kind of the reason we buy a 30-pack.
Exactly, so like it was just such like a you see the beer started foaming up on the ground, and you see all that when all the bottles cracked,
that foaming depression.
Yes, yeah, and you hear and you're like, son of a gun. Well, there goes that night. I'll see you tomorrow. There goes my Panera money. I used to work at Panera. So that's really cool, man. So tell me about where you work now. You work for a magazine company.
Yes.
How do you get these jobs? Do you just know people?
The guy that Roby Brock and Michael Tilley are the two guys who own the company I work for now. Great guys. I love working for them. I've worked there for 5 years. They're some of the best people I've ever worked for in my life. Mm-hmm. They contacted me out of the blue. Mm-hmm. It was September of 2015. I've been at the Jonesboro Sun for 8 years.
Okay.
And I don't say that, this is not being braggadocious, but while I was there, I won more awards than any reporter in the history of that newspaper.
And the thing you could say that is you did not plan to be a reporter. That's how it always goes. When you're something good at something, you find it. And then all of a sudden, you're like, I had no idea I was going to be doing this for 8 years. And then you get all these awards.
And actually, it's longer than that because I worked at the Sun for 8 years, but I started in 2004.
Okay.
And then I went to several...
In journalism?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you how old you are.
Oh, I'm 43.
Okay.
Yeah, I started...
You don't look it. I'm not copying you.
Thank
I'm not
you.
copying what you said to me earlier. It's very sweet of you.
Yeah.
You don't look it.
Yeah.
You look great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So I worked for a bunch of different companies, and pretty much they all contacted me.
Okay.
I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, I quit at the Sun in 2015. I had a falling out with the editor. I'll be nice about it.
Okay.
And so I just walked out. Didn't have a job. Went home. Told my wife I'd always wanted to write a book.
Yeah.
And
and that's another thing. I'm sorry. I keep cutting you off, but dude, I'm so excited to hear. Like the thing is too, I keep learning new things about you all the time. Whether you talk to me or if it's Andrew talking to me, like Andrew on the podcast, like he's worked for the Jonesboro Sun, and I was like, oh wow, that's kind of a big deal. And then I found you on Facebook. I saw who you were. And I was like, I know him. He goes to the Trim Gym.
Yeah.
And then I meet up with you, and you're like, oh yeah, I wrote a book. I'm like, who are you? Yeah. Who are you?
Hey, I always tell people this.
You keep surprising me.
That picture of Johnny Depp on my page.
Yeah.
I took that picture.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Of course you did.
Yeah, because he's a huge West Memphis supporter. Yeah.
Really?
He is he donated millions of dollars to get him out of prison.
Oh.
Yes. And actually, I will say this, Johnny Depp, one time, I've been around him a couple times, but the last time was in Little Rock in 2017, and he had come up because there was going to be...
Did he have like 40 bottles of wine behind him?
No, I'll tell you something funny about Johnny Depp. The dude's kind of jacked.
Is it really?
Like, he's not a small guy.
No.
I've been around a lot of like actors, and people who are in the entertainment industry, and a lot of them are really small. I mean, they're not big guys.
Yeah.
And but he was taller than me, which I'm not very tall. I'm only 5'9". But he was actually kind of like there was something to him. Like you could tell he worked out. Now I will say this: I'm not gonna. He was very gracious to me the last time I saw him because my daughter was supposed to go with me. What happened was in April of 2017. The state of Arkansas was going to have 8 executions in 2 weeks. You might... Okay, yeah. What happened was is they were...
A lot of death.
Yeah. What happened was is they were running out of their cocktail to perform the executions. It was going out of date. I'm not making this up.
Wait. Hold on. So the cocktails that they execute, then, it was... What? No, I'm sorry.
It was going out of date.
Going out of date? Like expiring?
It was going to expire on May 1st.
Oh. Jeez.
So they scheduled 8 executions in 2 weeks, which would be obviously the most ever in the history of the United States.
Yeah.
So now they knew when they scheduled them, and that some of them would not go through because the Supreme Court will step in, stay them. I won't bore you guys with all the legal jargon details of how that works, but they scheduled 8. So Damian Eccles of the West Memphis 3 would have been one of the 8 who was executed. And so he came back. Like, I was standing on the Capitol steps. I was working for Talk Business and Politics. And my boss called me and said, hey, can you go to Little Rock and cover, they're going to have a big rally to try to stop these executions. I said, okay.
Yeah.
So I drive down there. It's a super hot, sunny day. It was in April. It was 4 years ago, this month, in April.
Wow, really?
Yes. And so I'm standing there, and there's reporters from all over the country because everybody's like, Arkansas is really going to do this. And CNN's there.
Yeah, they're really going to do this.
CNN, New York Times, they're all there.
Yeah.
Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
And I'm standing there, and I look over, and underneath a tree next to these steps, there was a speaker speaking, and there's thousands of people out there.
Okay.
And I look, and I see Damian Eccles standing there with Johnny Depp and 2 bodyguards, and then Lori Davis, who is Damian Eccles' wife. And so I don't tell anybody. I just surreptitiously pick up my notebook and my camera.
Yep.
I just walk over to them, and as soon as Damian Eccles saw me, he knew me. I'd interviewed him. I talked to him on the phone even after he got out of prison. I was in the courtroom the day they got released.
Okay.
I broke the story, actually, that they were going to get released. It was #1 story in the world when it happened.
This is wild.
Yeah. So that was the 3rd time I'd had the #1 story in the world that I had broken.
Wow.
In my career. But I walked over to him. He said, hey, how you doing? Like we started exchanging greetings. And then, of course, Johnny Depp's there. My daughter was supposed to go with me that day.
Uh-huh.
She decided
she's
to stay
kicking
back.
herself in the butt because she didn't.
She didn't go. Yep. Well, here's the thing. So Johnny Depp makes
just grab the phone. Hey, Johnny, can you do something for my daughter real quick?
I didn't even ask him. He just did it.
Yeah, really?
I told him, I said, my daughter's going to be bummed out because she should have came with me. And he's like, he just smiles and sends her a little video. And she's with my wife getting her hair done or something. Uh-huh. And she's like, are you kidding me right now? Did this really happen? I'm like, yeah.
That's crazy.
So, and then, of course, the media horde comes up. As soon as they see me go over there, some of the guys, from the Democrat Gazette, they all know me.
Yeah.
In fact, it's funny. One of their big-time editors, a good friend of mine, Hunter, he was an underling over at the Jonesboro Sun at one time. His first job out of college. I say underling because the dude's 6'5", he's a monster.
Okay.
And we used to work out at the Trim Gym together, and he super great guy, one of the best journalists I've ever worked with. And he was very I kind of mentored him. He wanted to write good stories, and he first day great potential. So anyway, so they kind of knew those guys knew who I was. And so and actually a week later I was on death row covering. They ended up executing 4, and I was there for 3.
Okay.
I only missed the 4th one because my daughter had a softball tournament. So I said I can't go to the last one because I've got other.
Did you witness?
Here's the process for witnessing. So what they do is there's a pool. They'll let 3 media members into the room where the execution is happening.
no cameras. There has to be nothing, no recording.
There's no recording going on.
Just simply something that's coming. You see right down.
Yes, and they're strapped to a gurney. Their arms are splayed out.
Yeah,
they're strapped in because it's lethal injection. And then family members will be in there, who want to watch the execution. And family members for the victim and for the person being executed. And so what they do is a lottery system. And I'm gonna be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
I have seen my fair share of death.
Yeah.
And I have no like people say all the time, oh, I'd want to go in there and watch an execution.
No.
Not me.
Mm-mm.
But the thing of it was, they tried to rope me in to do it anyway. They said, hey, could you put your name in there? And I'm like,
I don't want to, but I can if you want me to.
I went ahead and agreed to do it, but they didn't. It was it's a lottery, so they just pick a number out there, and they didn't pick my number. Thank God.
Yeah.
Honestly, because I don't
blame you.
And listen, these guys are horrible to the core people.
Yeah.
I mean, the death penalty is something that I can go back and forth on a day-to-day basis, and I promise you, I've talked to people, and I've made them think about it.
Yeah.
Because it's a really hard thing because you have to understand.
You have to have a humanistic side of it.
Yeah, and you have to understand this. When we execute a person as a society, it's the government picking and choosing who lives and dies. And here's the statistic. Roughly 10% of the people who are convicted of a crime did not commit it. You know why Damian Eccles was down there to rally against those executions? Had he not been released from prison, he would have been one of the 8.
One of the 8, yeah.
Yeah, so...
Now, I'm not trying to steer too far off this. I don't want to steer too far off of this. Did he end up getting... was he found not guilty? Damien?
What happened is the state of Arkansas was under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
They've been in prison for about 18 years.
Okay.
I'd written a lot of stories. I wrote a book about it. Mara Lavert wrote the book Devil's Knot in 2003. Great book. 2002. Great book. The documentaries came out. There was just this white hot pressure on officials in Arkansas to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And so finally they came up with a deal. And what it was is they offered them what they call an Alford plea. An Alford plea is the Supreme Court ruled in 1974 that you can walk into a courtroom
Mm-hmm.
and you as a defendant can say, I acknowledge, I profess my innocence,
Mm-hmm.
but I acknowledge that the state may have enough evidence to try me in court.
Okay.
So it's basically a no contest plea. Here's the thing. The no contest plea means they can't sue the state for wrongful imprisonment, so they don't get the the big multi-million-dollar settlement.
Okay.
So it worked out for everybody. Now Jason Baldwin
Mm-hmm.
of the three refused it.
Yeah.
And then it took a couple days of his attorneys coaxing him, because what was going to happen is, and Judge David Laser here in Jonesboro,
Mm-hmm.
he was the new judge on the case at the time,
Okay.
and him and I've talked about it. They were going to get a new trial.
Mm.
And they were going to get exonerated. Scott Ellington will tell you that the evidence was stale.
Yeah.
The prosecutor at the time, he's a judge now. Scott's a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell all West Memphis 3 supporters, who just blast Scott because of this Alford plea deal, because they just wanted him to be completely exonerated and out. And I said, well, at least he let them go. He agreed to the deal.
Right.
So so they did an Alford plea. They didn't get to sue anyone or anything like that. They were just released. How Jason Baldwin's attorneys were able to convince him of it was his friend Damien was on death row.
Yeah.
Jason was not, and neither was Jesse Miskelly Jr., the other defendant in the case. So it would have been, basically they made the argument to him, your friend could die.
Yeah.
Take the deal.
Yeah, take the deal. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back to what happens, tell me if you want to.
Sure.
I mean, stuff you want to
Sure.
about what your experience is watching that, and I think we're going to have to close it out here. So you're in there. You have to see everything, and you can't record anything. You're writing things down. Guy strapped to the gurney.
Yeah.
I kind of want to, if you don't mind.
No, it's
about
fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
Cool.
So what happens, and I can tell you the process. So what happens is they there's I almost think it's corny at this point, because there's like a telephone in there, like an old timey telephone.
Is it red?
I don't think so. But so they have a phone, and then what they do, I can tell you how crazy this system is.
Please.
So there's a journalist named Jade Garcia
Okay.
from CNN.
Okay.
I met her during the first execution that I went down to witness.
Okay.
It was Liddell Lee.
Okay.
It was the first execution in Arkansas in 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
Coincidentally, a couple days later, I watched the first double execution in the history in the United States in over 20 years.
Same day?
Same day. They executed 2 guys back to back.
Wow.
And I was there for that one. Well, Jade and I were talking like we'd never met.
Yeah.
And so we were talking. I pulled up. I have a convertible, and I was in my convertible with like his cut-off T-shirt on, because I mean it's a long drive from my house down to it's like a 4-hour drive. So I was like, I'm not putting on a suit and doing all this for that.
Yeah.
So I drive down there looking like I'm some bum out of a gym, and the security guys at the front gates are like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm George Jared." They're like, "Huh." So then I call.
You're like, "Yeah, bro."
Yeah, guns.
Yeah.
And, let me in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who wants to go into a prison? Death row unit.
Exactly.
So, but finally, I convinced him to let me in. I said, guys, I've got my dress clothes in my trunk if you want to see them. And finally, one of the
Well, do you have like press ID?
I didn't at the time.
Okay.
Because that's kind of becoming a thing of the past. Like I haven't had press ID in years.
Oh.
And I don't mean to say this, but like most things that I deal with, people know who I am. I mean, it's not, they know who I am. So I
You've done it for so long.
Yeah. So I get down there, Jade and I start talking because we're waiting on this execution, and it takes hours and hours, and you're just sitting there, and we watch the sun go. We got there at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Ugh.
We watch the sun go down. There's fields all around. It's very
Mhm.
hot. We're sitting in this murky gray like mess hall for the prisoners. They set it up as a media room, and we're just sitting there waiting for this guy to die.
Ugh.
And she looked at me and she said, "This is our process for executing people in this country." She said, "Shouldn't they just know?" And the reason we were talking about it was one guy who, among the 8 who didn't get executed, was a guy named Don Davis.
Mm-hmm.
And a few days before this, he literally was sitting in the gurney, strapped up, everything in his arms, ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like he thought he was going to die any moment. Had his final meal, said goodbye to his family, all that jazz. And then 10 minutes before his death warrant expired, the U.S. Supreme Court stepped in and stayed his execution. And I thought, how inhumane is that? I mean, the guy's a bad guy. He murdered somebody.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, I'm not feeling sorry for him but as a society, that's inhumane. Why don't we just have a system where, okay, the guy knows all of his appeals are done, the process is over, and then tomorrow he's going to die.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're gonna that's what it should be. It shouldn't be this game where, they schedule an execution for like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then at 11:30 that night they still don't know if they're going to execute him.
They don't have their ducks in the row.
Yes. Well, it's not even
well,
that.
I shouldn't say that because I have nothing. I have
it's
no idea how
not
it goes.
ducks. What it is that we have a process where you can appeal this to different courts, and that's fine. Don't take away the process.
Yeah.
But let the process play out and then have the execution.
Yes. Yeah.
Because and then don't, like you can plan it for a day, like let's say next week, April 27th. I'm just throwing a number out there. Well, on April 26th, let's do all the legal wrangling and maneuvering.
Yeah.
And then let the Supreme Court decide then.
Right.
And then say, okay, tomorrow, Ian, you're going to be executed. That's it.
Words I don't really want to hear, but good. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't I don't
yeah. But that's so crazy, man. I really want to delve more into this. Maybe part 2, maybe.
Yeah.
But I got to wrap it up here. Thank you for listening to Well That's Something Podcast. Hit and like that subscribe button if you would, please. That would really help me out. And also check out their crime podcast,
Diamond State Murder Board.
And they can find that where?
Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, pretty much anywhere. You can friend me on Facebook. I've still got. I went in and tried to delete some accounts, like fake accounts that I had accepted when I was just accepting everybody. So you can friend me or find me on Instagram. I'm on there too. So.
Yeah, cool.
Or find Andrew.
And if you don't like or subscribe to this podcast, he will execute you.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He'll put in the paperwork for it. That was terrible.
I'll just write really mean things about you and make sure everybody knows about them.
Right. All right. Thanks for listening.